Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Brief. Today, we're very, very fortunate to have Ann Cutler here with us. Ann, welcome.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's great to be on.
So, Ann is the Vice President of Global Communications at Keeper Security. Keeper, we're going to go deep dive into that. But before we do, Ann, why don't you get us started by telling us a bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really glad to be here. It's great to chat with you today, Chris. And yeah, my background is probably a bit unusual. I don't know if you have too many guests that have the same background that I do, but I like to think that it kind of makes me who I am as an employee and as our head of communications here at Keeper Security. So I started out as a television journalist. I was a TV anchor primarily, a reporter as well. Worked in TV markets all around the country. So I went to school in Los Angeles. I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue in Beverly Hills. Very glamorous collegiate life. And then took my first job in Casper, Wyoming, market 198 out of, I think, 205. So about as small town as it gets. Definitely a wake up call, but such a wonderful experience. And when you're working in a market like that, you do everything, it's you're producing the news, you're reporting, you're anchoring, you're doing the debriefs afterward, you're writing web copy. I mean, we didn't even do much for the website. Social media then was like not a big thing. That was something that progressed through my career.
Right.
But really jack of all trades. So I worked in TV markets all around the country and then landed here in Washington, D.C because of my husband. He's in the military. He is a JAG attorney and got stationed in Quantico. So I was like, oh gosh, let me see if I can just casually land a television job in DC. No big deal. And was lucky enough to find a gig with Fox 5 News here. It's a wonderful station. They really had me do a little bit of everything. So I did anchoring, reporting. I did their political show sometimes. I would cover sports for them ahead of the Commanders games, you name it, I did it. And at that point in my career, social media was so big. So I had a huge social presence. Obviously, the website, we were very, very quick to get our content online and then even delving into podcasts a little bit as well. So, I kind of saw that transformation throughout my career where you go from just like being on camera, on TV, broadcast to streaming live, doing the web, doing the social, doing the podcast, doing all of these other things. Um, but with that came the realization that with two kids and those crazy hours, waking up at 1:30 in the morning maybe wasn't the most sustainable lifestyle for me in the long term. And I thought, I had a good run. I am working at a great station in a great market, very proud of what I've done. I think it's time for me to say farewell to television and find the most boring, relaxing job where I get every holiday off. I get off at 5 p.m. vacation time. And I went to the federal government as one does out of a glamorous television career. So it was great. It was a great kind of reset for me. It was during COVID, so that was really nice too. I got to work from home, really reconnect with the family and spend more time with them. And I started at the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. I definitely wanted to be in the tech space. And then CISA, the cybersecurity agency, which is also under DHS, needed someone who could do proactive media. They were becoming a bigger agency, cybersecurity becoming much more important. And they asked me to come over and transfer over to them. So I did that. And that's where I fell in love with cybersecurity. So after a few years doing that, I decided it was time to shift over to the private sector, a bit more money there, let's be honest. And I came to Keeper Security, and the rest is history. I've been here about 4 years now.
I love that. It totally, uh, even though it's atypical, it totally tracks. I mean, all that fits together really nicely. And I have to, well, certainly given the on-screen activities you do for Keeper,
Yeah.
your background helps. I mean, not everybody is a natural or has experience on how to handle the media and how to, make sure that you're coming across well and to deliver clear, concise messages and land that soundbite. I'm sure your background helped you a ton in being really prepared for that.
every single day. It really does. And I think deadlines, that's another thing.
Yeah,
When I was on air, you can't miss a deadline because the show's going to
yeah,
go on no matter what. And at Fox 5 here in DC, I mean, sometimes I would have 7 live hits per day if we had breaking news.
yeah,
That is 7 times that you have to have a story written. You have to have your makeup done, your hair done. You have to have
yeah,
memorized what it is you're going to talk about, be on camera, be calm, be eloquent, deliver your message, be an expert on that subject matter, even if it's something that you knew nothing about the day before. You just got to dive in. And all of that has prepared me so much. And then, of course, as a communicator, certainly you learn to communicate on television. And that's something that's been, very valuable as well.
yeah. I can see the parallels even beyond that because in news, you're looking for the story, right? You're looking for the nuance, the details, the clarity. And in cybersecurity, the same thing in many respects. You're looking for how to be safe, how to be smart, how to see a threat.
Mhm.
And to be very cautious and yet very effective. So it's interesting how that unintentionally fit so well.
Yeah.
So let's turn to Keeper. There are so many flavors of cybersecurity
Yeah.
that most people don't even realize that it's a vast. It's all the way from preventative to hardware, all the way to post breach.
Yeah.
Where do you go? Where's Keeper fit? What's the superpowers of Keeper?
Well, probably a little bit of all of that, with the exception of the hardware.
Yeah,
We are a SaaS company, so software as a service. And when I started, we were doing a lot of consumer password management, which we still do. That's how the company started in
yeah,
2011. I guess we're 15 years old now. And kind of a funny story there, actually. Our two co founders were on a flight to China, and the App Store was just starting to come into existence and take submissions. And one of them had an idea, Craig, or CTO, for like a password keeper. And so he was kind of, developing it. And our CEO, Darren, was like sketching out the UI. And by the time they landed from the US, by the time they landed in China, they had this prototype for this app that is literally the foundation for our entire company. So kind of crazy start, but
yeah,
they are awesome, forward thinking entrepreneurs at heart. This is what they love to do. So if you know them, you realize maybe it's not that crazy of a story. But when I started Keeper about 4 years ago, we had the consumer side. We also had password management for businesses. And
yeah.
we had really a big range of businesses. So everything from small businesses to mid-size up to some pretty large enterprises. We also did connection management and secrets management. And secrets are just non human identities. So it's like kind of like credentials that machines use.
Mhm.
So, as over the past 4 years, I've been lucky enough to witness this huge transformation as the company has grown and expanded into what we call privileged access management. And we've taken all of our different capabilities, combined them into one unified platform, and we offer PAM, privileged access management, which includes the password, credentials, the secrets. And this is critically important now with AI, because you need to secure AI identities as well, right? And then we have the connection management, remote browser isolation. We have an admin console. We integrate with SIM platforms, with IGA, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. I will not bore you with that today. But the reason that has been so critical for us is this is a technology and a cybersecurity tool that major enterprises use. So
Mhm.
we went from a company that sold password management, like I said, kind of across the board on deal size. And suddenly now we're upstreaming into the enterprise and we're selling much, much larger deals. So that has changed how I do my job, how the marketing team does their job. And I say that separately because I'm communications, marketing is marketing. And I do think there's like a line in the sand between us that's very important. So we can get into that.
Yeah,
Um, but it's changed the demographic of who we market to and communicate to. It's changed how I message. And so that's been a really, really interesting shift. And it was a challenge for us as well to learn how to go from this very kind of consumer and maybe more small business focused communications to now communicating for the enterprise and communicating subject matter that's much, much more technical
Yeah.
than what we had done before.
And you also were pretty active in the government sector as well, right? And state and municipal level as well,
Yeah,
which changes
absolutely.
things dramatically, right? That's a whole different language and audience than the way they buy, the way they think about you. The acronym soup's different. And
Yeah.
you know that from DHS and your experience at SIPA. Is that
CISA.
did I get that? CISA. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew I was
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
get that
Yeah.
wrong.
That's
Um,
okay. That's okay. Yeah, it's been a whole unique learning curve, even though I did do government and I was on that side of government,
yeah.
working for CISA, being kind of internal as a government employee. Now being a vendor on the outside, working with government has been just a fascinating experience. And I've been so blessed to be a part of that. I swear my team and my job function just kind of continues to grow the longer I'm
Yeah.
here. And that might just be my personality. I love taking on new challenges, and this company is great. If there's something that needs to be done and we want to do it, they give that opportunity. So, I'm doing everything now on my team from, traditional PR and media and communications, both internal and external, to all of our social media. So, our earned and then influencer as well. Anything like
Mhm.
paid digital ads, we leave to the marketing team because they're the experts on that. And then I do government relations. I do analyst relations, which is really critical and key. Um, we were actually named, and maybe this is something else we can get into, but you look at the growth of the company, we were named the second fastest growing cybersecurity software company in the world,
Mm.
behind only Google.
Wow.
So this is like a massive rocket ship that we're on. And then maybe the most fun part of my job, it's all great, but our Formula One sponsorship. And I get to help lead our sponsorships and have that on my team. And it's just been incredible. But going back to that government relations component of what we do, we are leaning very hard into the public sector because we see such a need there. And you look at some of the cyber attacks that have hit the government, and they impact our citizens in the
Yeah.
US, daily lives, their identities being stolen, operations being shut down, you name it. The government is a massive target, and Keeper is very uniquely positioned to help protect the government. So that's been really cool to be a part of that journey as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about the sponsorship a bit. Um, I would have, and maybe you also have a soccer team. I would, as with the name Keeper, I would have thought for sure you would have had soccer in the mix. Uh, do you have a soccer sponsorship?
We do not, and boy, have
Okay.
we talked about it. Because right? It's, like, perfect, the
Yeah.
goalkeeper.
Yeah.
No, we don't. We are narrow and deep on Formula One, and we love it.
And so what's the connection there? I mean, obviously you can provide services to the team, which most people don't realize it, but the average Formula One team is a massive business. Like each team's like operating cost is like hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
And they have all kinds of technology that is confidential and information that they don't want to get out there. So, it's natural that they want to protect it and would need, your services. So, but beyond serving them in that way, what's the natural connection and how do you guys make the most of it?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because you know, 4 years ago, as we were talking about kind of when I started with this company and started on this amazing journey with Keeper, both professionally for me, but then also watching the growth and the expansion of the company and the transition into this like slightly different space. Um, we never would have thought of doing this. It
Yeah.
was not the right time. The company wasn't in the right place. We didn't have the right product. Now, this could not be a more natural fit. So it comes down to, a few different things. Obviously, customer demographics are huge. You look at who watches Formula One, and that aligns very, very closely with our key buyers. And so it's a sport that is driven, to your point, by technology and data. These cars are supercars running down the track, and
Yeah.
they are upgrading these cars and adding new technologies. I mean, literally from week to week, the
Yeah.
upgrades that you see over the course of the season are unbelievable. And sometimes these technologies will make themselves into, normal commercial vehicles that we drive every day. Should I have an example? Yes. Do I? No. But I do know there are
Mm.
technologies that
Yeah.
have made their way into commercial vehicles. Fuel, I think that's one good one. That's a good example
Yeah.
right there. Some of the fuel technology. Um, so when you have all of this data, the cars have 300 sensors on them during a race weekend, and they are bringing in terabytes of data every single race weekend. They're then taking that data and they're testing it back at the factory. So they're doing the wind tunnel, they're doing their simulations, they have their reserve driver, their backup driver simulating track conditions, exact track conditions
Yeah.
from the data that they get from how the car's performing. How many marbles are on the track from the tires, the moisture in the air, you name it. Every single thing they can replicate back in the factory and simulate that and then send that information back. They even work overnight between the practices. So they'll do a
Mhm.
practice on a Friday, they'll test overnight, optimize, figure out their strategy, and then send all that information back to track. So that's everything that's happening at the factory. More than 1,000 employees there. Meanwhile, at the track, when you activate for a race, you have an entire tech stack that is being set up, a full operation that you're building in some place like, hey, Azerbaijan, Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia, the US. You're going all over the world. Some markets a bit safer than others, right? And so all of that needs to be tightly secured and protected. And then you have the threats. You think about
Yeah.
such a high profile sport. What if something happened? What if a race got shut down? Um, these cars, what if the cars couldn't operate? There have been examples of tech incidents that have actually prevented cars from starting,
Mm.
which is crazy to think, not being able to
Yeah.
start your car because of a technology incident. So there's a huge target on Formula One as well. So we look at this, the buyer demographics that we have and the demographics of the Formula One audience. We look at geographically where they are in the world, all these markets
Yep.
that are huge markets for us, the US, Europe, APAC. We look at the need of the team and the security concerns and how technologically driven they are. And it's like, it could not make more sense for us to be in
Yeah.
this sport. So we absolutely love it. And I think the thing that is most beneficial out of all of it, and there's so much that we get out of our partnership, but the single most beneficial thing is the fact that it's authentic. It's not
Yeah.
just a sticker on the car. They are actually using our technology, and it plays a critical role in protecting their systems and their data and their credentials and their operations. And so that's something that we feel really good about. And it's been a fantastic ride for us.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there are too many sponsorships where the belief that the celebrity or team is actually going to use the product is just not there, I mean,
Yeah.
especially when you get to, like, Pepsi and Coke. Like, I don't think that it's a hard, leap for most to think that Beyoncé is not drinking Pepsi, at least not on the regular, I mean,
Probably not. Yeah.
but it's a big check, and it makes
Yeah.
sense on that level, but, yeah, I can totally see the fit. So let's talk about your area of focus and how you collaborate with the marketing team, because you talked about traditional PR. What is
Mhm.
traditional PR today? Because certainly, I'm old, so I remember back in the day we would shoot lots of footage and have B-roll, and we'd send that out along with the release and on the wire, and maybe do some key events, and that was the majority of what was happening. Now it's much
Yeah.
more complex than that. So tell us what it looks like today for you.
Yeah. Well, the biggest game changer is AI. You can't have a conversation about cereal today without talking about AI, I feel like. It is really and truly something that has like transformed the industry. But you're right. And this goes back to my journalism roots. I remember traditional PR, and it's like we get a press
Yeah,
release, they have a press conference, the journalists go out, you bring your cameras, it's you take
yeah.
notes. Oh, a handwritten note. What is that?
I
You
know,
don't
I know.
record it on your phone and use an AI app to summarize it and then write your whole story for you. So it's changed night and day. But there are still some fundamentals that are the
Yeah,
same. And, now I think the biggest key, and this is something that I'm so proud of what we did at CISA. And it was really fun coming out of journalism and going to the public sector and being in an agency that was forward thinking and was, faster paced and did big, huge media engagements. We did 60 Minutes. We did, all the network morning shows, you name it, like good stuff, NBC Nightly News. It was awesome. But the way that we had to approach that was very holistic because we were sending the message to the public, but then also our critical infrastructure owners and operators, to cybersecurity professionals in the industry. And so you have to really ensure that if you're sending a message out, that you're hitting all of those different audiences where they live. And that is where I think PR has changed, is reaching people where they live. One
yeah,
example I give is when the Ukraine war started, and there was a huge concern about cyber attacks, not just in Ukraine, and we did see that, but also kind of the waterfall effect of cyber attacks impacting other markets across Europe, potentially even in the United States. And that happened. When Russia invaded, they actually launched a satellite cyber attack against a satellite maker across Europe, and it took down satellite communication for Ukraine.
yeah.
And this was
Mm,
right at the start of the war, right? So
mm,
at CISA, what we had to do is communicate the threat that's out there and how people can protect themselves. And we launched what we called Shields Up, and it was like a Star Wars
sure.
reference because
Yeah,
there's a bunch of nerds in cybersecurity. We love it. Everyone's a proud nerd in this industry, and so it was a big campaign where we did communicate to all of those different people. We had a landing page that we would update every single day. We did major media hits. That was our 60 Minutes interview was related to that.
yeah.
We did a lot of social media. We did alerts. We used our Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, the JCDC, which, yes, is an ACDC reference. We liked those.
Yeah,
So we had fun. And I was lucky enough to be able to kind of be the point person for that entire campaign and help bring all of those different elements together. And that was pretty
nice.
high stakes when you think
Yeah,
about the impact of what a cyber attack could do for critical infrastructure, for
sure.
the war, for our allies. So that is the perspective that I bring into everything that I do here at Keeper.
Yeah,
There's no just putting out a press release anymore. You really need to ensure that you're hitting it from every single different angle. And it's a challenge and it's certainly more work, but it's also more fun.
yeah,
We've started doing influencer partnerships with developers. So you can,
sure.
believe it or not, use influencer to hit a B2B audience, which seems a bit counterintuitive, but you can and it works. And having someone who is a third party talking about how they use Keeper and how it benefits them. And again, the authenticity of that, of a real developer who's actually using our product, um, that brings a lot of credence and sometimes a lot more power than a press release.
Yeah,
But getting back to the AI, conversation and all of this, something that I found that's really interesting. Obviously, we use AI for content generation. I
yeah,
hate to say it, but you are stupid if you're not using it. It is an amazing tool. It's there. It saves time. It can fact check. You can create your own models. We have um, a fabulous gem with Gemini that we use that has all of our product information uploaded, our style guide, our past press
Yeah.
releases, our commentary, things like that.
Yep.
We have another one with Claude, we have another one with chat. So we have all these different resources that we've tailored to our needs. So yes, we use it for content creation, certainly.
Yep.
Um, we use it for streamlining processes. But where I'm also seeing an impact, and this is like such a full circle moment, is, for many years, I felt like the press release has become less and less important.
Yeah.
And you need to do a bit more like direct media pitching. Gone are the days where you send a press release to a newsroom and they handwrite a story about that press release. If anything, it's just a reprint. You get some vanity metrics out of it. Oh, all
Yeah.
these publications picked us up, right?
Yep.
However, one thing that we've been seeing a lot of is with GEO and the shift toward AI overviews when you do search, and the shift toward AI models utilizing content from the internet for their responses. It's become really, really important to get that information out there. And the press release is actually having a bit of a resurgence
Yeah.
because these AI overviews are tapping into those press releases and using those as sources. So
Yeah.
a bit of a full circle moment there, but it's PR is definitely not what it used to be. I'll
Oh,
leave it
yeah,
with
for
that.
sure. Well, and influencers is a great example. I think there was a day where influencers were really a consumer direct kind of play
Yeah.
mostly, and we've used them very successfully in the pharma space for influencing folks on the Hill. And nobody would have thought that. In fact, when we pitched it to the client, they were like, "No, that doesn't make any sense." And we said, "It's a pay for performance channel, the
Mm,
way that we do it." And
yeah.
so they said, "Oh, well, okay, if it's pay for performance, performance is going to matter." And sure enough, we saw tremendous, tremendous results. But it's all about finding the right people, just like always. Even for the consumer plays, it's all about the right people and making sure they understand the story and can reflect your brand appropriately and deliver the right idea authentically.
Authentically,
Yeah. So
authentically, and that's
yeah,
really what it always boils down to. They
yeah,
have to be believing in what they're talking about and actually using it, and some of our favorite influencers are the ones that we've worked with for years because
yeah,
they know people like the back of their hand because they use it in their personal life every single day. So it's very easy for them to tell that personal story of, "Oh, yeah, a keeper saved me here or there."
yep,
Wherever. It's so great. I had to set up a new system. I could transfer everything over easily. I needed to show some proof of identification. I had it saved in my vault. I was overseas and had to share the Netflix credentials, and my family had them, whatever the example may
yeah,
be. When these people are actually using the product, it makes it just such a better influencer partnership and so much more
yeah.
effective.
So let's talk about the global component of it, because having worked globally most of my career, it's amazing how different parts of the world need different nuance of the way they communicate. And sometimes it's
Mm,
a language issue, often and almost always it's a culture issue.
yeah.
How do you reflect that with a small team? Because I know you work globally a ton and even travel to international markets. How's that working for you guys, and how do you collaborate across the aisle with? I mean, first of all, from a marketing perspective, you're reflecting, and trying to generate interest and reassure existing customers. But then you have the infrastructure internally that has to be, culturally aware and in the right language in many cases, all those kinds of things. So how does that all fit together in the keeper environment?
Well, let's just say I am a frequent flyer.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like I travel more than I'm at home, but I love
Yeah.
it. So it works for me. We have grown quite a bit as a team as we've grown as a company, and having boots on the ground in each region is so critically important because it's going to be very, very hard to understand those nuances if you don't.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky enough to have a team in the United States, have an employee in EMEA, as well as three PR teams there.
Yeah.
And I have one PR team that does both consumer and B2B here in the US, three in Europe. a PR team in Asia, and then 2 employees in Asia as well. And having that communications link is like, I cannot emphasize enough what a difference that has made.
Yeah.
One thing is just the time zones, that's a very simple thing, but going through reviews and approvals on content and the back and forth when you've got team members in Japan or, commentary opportunity in Japan is incredibly difficult. It
Yeah.
really takes a lot of coordination. Same thing with Europe. So we're constantly looking at process, and process isn't very sexy or exciting. But it really matters, and you
Yeah.
really need to have, um, you know, a functioning, quick process in place where you can get things done, reviewed,
Yeah.
and out the door in a timely manner. And we've tried everything under the sun. And oftentimes for us, it just boils down to slack because we're moving
Yeah.
so quickly. And again, going back to my TV days, I understand the importance of getting something out the door like that.
Yeah.
If you have a journalist from New York Times who wants to talk to you, you need to have that prep document done. You need to have your speaker briefed, and they need to be on sometimes in half an hour, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to move quickly. So having boots on the ground is really important. Localization, obviously, in terms of language, there's nothing worse. And I kind of laugh when I get like an Amazon shipment, and it came from China, and it's written in Chinese. And half of it, you like translate the instructions, and not only does it not make sense, but it's like hysterical, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Think of the flip side on that. Like, that's how
Yeah.
they view
Yeah.
Americans, us
Yeah.
who are sending out
That's right.
content if it's
Yep.
poorly localized, right?
Yep.
So you have to have good translation and localization. And that doesn't just mean direct translation, it means putting it in the verbiage, using the trade terms that they use in that region.
Yeah.
If it's a region like Japan is, a great example, and that has been the biggest challenge for us in terms of breaking into that market because it's so different.
Mm.
But one thing in Japan, even though we're much more focused on the enterprise in the US, Japan has a lot more small businesses than the United States. They
Yep.
also tend not to talk about cybersecurity as much in the media there. And so we find there's much more of an education component there. And then also, in addition to the education, really making sure that you're speaking to that small business a bit more than we would in the other markets.
Yeah.
Um, and then data, we love research, we love creating content. So if we can bring in local data that matters, that shows how many cyber attacks are facing, how many organizations have the tools they need to protect against them,
Yep.
um, what the government regulations are too, what type of governance they're looking at in their country. All of this needs
Yeah.
to be incorporated. And it's something
Yep.
that's very challenging to do from the United States or one central point all over the world.
Right.
But it is critically important to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a client that was doing in mainland China doing tech communications in English because it was uh, culturally acceptable.
Hmm.
And as they started to head to Indonesia, we were very careful to advise them that Indonesia is very different. And culturally, if you put it in English there, they won't even consider you.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's the difference. So there's a difference. There's localization and transcreation so that it's culturally in tune and understandable in a very clear way. But then there's also just like areas where you cannot break certain rules, and
Of
if you
course.
want to be taken seriously, it's a and as you said, managing the 24-hour clock because that's really what it is when you work globally, and certainly being in media relations, it inherently is because, well, it's not a crisis, it's an opportunity, right?
Yeah,
And every opportunity, you have to be ready to jump on and to guide and support rather than be affected by. If the affect the narrative, don't be affected by it. Is half the battle, right?
absolutely. And Japan, again, I give this example because it has been so challenging for us. Um, Also, the biggest area of growth for us. So,
Yeah,
we're learning, we're growing, we continue getting better and optimizing what we do there. But one of the big things that we do is rapid response and media commentary on hot topics, newsjacking.
Yeah.
And that works incredible for us in the United States. It works great in Europe. Um, Maybe not some markets as much as others, but again, for the
Yeah.
most part, works great in Europe, works in Singapore, doesn't work in Japan. And there's actual, like, real cultural sensitivity in Japan about commenting on a breach. It's a faux pas, and you don't want to do that, and it's seen as opportunistic. So there's some exceptions, and you have to know what those exceptions are. We always position ourselves as very educational, very positive, very forward thinking. Here's how
Mhm.
businesses can and should protect themselves, not judging the business about,
Yeah.
what happened, what they did wrong, none of that.
Right.
But you have to be so sensitive with how you approach things. And then in Japan, it's very much still in person relationship building. But on the flip side of that, they will at times do a full article about your company just because they want to profile it or profile the leader. And that's something that's more rare in the United States.
Yeah.
So the quality of content I find in Japan is actually better when you land it, but it's much harder to land. So it's
Yeah.
just a
Totally.
completely different challenge and game, and you got to learn the rules to it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, um so Beyond the Brief all about, like, things that we all write these briefs or plans and put the strategic idea that we're trying to bring to life down as the guiding principle. Inevitably, though, we get into it and something comes out of nowhere that's better or unique that needs to be addressed, and it makes the work better. Do you have any stories of insights or observations that I imagine you probably have lots because you're dealing with a news cycle, and the listening technology today is unparalleled in its ability to give us ways to approach things. So you probably don't even have time to write plans like you did 20 years ago, in the same way. But are there any examples of insights that came out of unique spaces and places that led to really interesting programs or messages or releases that you might have covered?
Sure, yeah. I will push back against the not having time to plan thing because I
Yeah,
am obsessed with process and planning.
yeah,
You see, our plans are so beautiful. And it's really, again, going back to being a global company, it's
yeah,
critical. When we have
yeah,
PR teams and employees all around the world, they need to be able to pop into our plans at any given time and know
yeah,
exactly what is going on. So we actually do plan like crazy.
yeah,
But I have a fun example that's actually just super recent of, things coming out of nowhere. Um, with our Formula One sponsorship, one of the things that we get in our contractual allocations is what's called driver time. And we have two
yep,
fantastic drivers, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. They are both funny, they're smart, they're personable, they're good looking guys, great spokespeople. Just like I couldn't dream of having better people to speak on behalf of Keeper and our partnership and our relationship. But they're not actors,
right,
and so you
right,
get this time with them and you're like, "Okay, what are we gonna do?" And
sure,
we put together some TV commercials. We have some reads that we use for, I don't know, slapping onto the end of videos that we make, whatever it may be, right? Educational content, you name it.
yeah,
And you go to the shoot with them. And I've done these all over now. It's great. I've done them in Grove at their headquarters in Australia, in Bahrain, in France. And you get there and you start doing the content, and it immediately becomes clear what they like doing and what
right,
they don't really like doing. And they'll do it, and they'll do it with a smile on their face because they're
right, right,
absolute professionals. But there's some things that they just enjoy more than others, and guess what? They're
sure,
human beings. Us too, right? There's
yep,
parts of
yep,
my day,
yep,
invoicing, maybe don't enjoy that quite as much
right,
as planning for a Formula One party, right?
right, sure,
Um, but we do it all, and we happily do it, and that's our role, right? As do they. But one of the things that I realized is the stuff that they like doing is stuff that fits within their personality and their wheelhouse. And these guys
Sure.
are competitors. They're professional athletes and they love to
Yeah.
compete. So we just had a big shoot that we did with Carlos Sainz at this incredible villa. We were in France. We shot this beautiful piece. I'll give a little sneak peek. It has to do with chess, which
Mm.
is kind of interesting. Formula One, chess, and
Right.
cybersecurity. I'll leave it at that. We shot some other content. One of them involved fishing. One of them involved golf. It sounds crazy and off the wall, but Carlos had a blast. And because he had a blast, there was a smile on his face the whole time.
Right.
The content was great. It was authentic. And that just shines through the camera. And
Yeah.
everything that we did was just better because he enjoyed it. So I think that is so incredibly important and valuable. And anything that you
Yeah.
do, oh my God, a dry throat. Hold on. I just got too excited talking about
Yeah.
communications and marketing.
I like it. I like it.
But everything that you do, if you can make it authentic, and that's kind of
Yeah.
that theme that we keep going back to on this conversation. But if
Yeah.
it's something that is a person's really going to enjoy, if it's an influencer, if it's a speaker, if it's a speaker doing an interview, if it's a spokesperson doing a commercial, whatever it may
Right.
be, if it's authentic to them and they enjoy it, they're passionate about it, that's
Yeah.
going to come through.
Yeah, in my past, I worked with a auto parts manufacturer, and we sponsored our sponsor drivers were Michael Waltrip and Dale
Mm.
Earnhardt, and
Wow.
they're naturally goofy around each other, and so we actually built the work to reflect that and the way they would tease each other, and it just had so much more energy, so more. They had fun doing it. It just you could tell. I mean, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, people can tell there's nothing worse than seeing somebody who's not a golfer being asked to try and be in a golf environment or to be in,
Yes.
I mean, it's so obvious. And unfortunately, a lot of people write the brief, write the script, write all the stuff and get there and realize that. And it's flat, it just
Yeah.
doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
it totally makes
But
sense.
my
S
passion is getting people excited about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And I can do that in a way that works for them. I've done my job and I've done it well.
Yeah. No, and you're smart as you and your team are smart to bring out the human reality of these people, their
Yeah.
real personalities, because it's so much better than just a flat sponsorship or a dry read.
Yeah.
If you can give them a way for their personal kind of interest to shine. Are there any things that you used to do, even in this 4-year run with Keeper, that you no longer do or you're doing less of in the marketing realm?
Consumer,
Yeah.
consumer. We have shifted toward a company that is much more enterprise focused. And with that, we need to portray uh, an enterprise demeanor, right?
Right.
The persona needs to be more enterprise. So even though we value our consumers, that's a huge part of our business still. We need to show the world that we can take care of big, massive, corporations, government agencies, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
and we have to portray that persona to the world, right? And that's
Yeah.
something that I think consumers really respect and small businesses really respect. It's not that we're
Yeah.
forgetting about them, but we're really putting ourselves forward in a different light. And when I started, I'll say consumer, I think is a lot easier. It's very easy to talk about, oh, security threats ahead of the Super Bowl or whatever it may
Right.
be, and you can land some really easy, good mainstream coverage that has great reach, but that
Yeah.
doesn't communicate that what we can do and the value that we can provide to a
Yeah.
much, much larger business. So that has been the biggest shift that I've seen. And with that, we don't just look at vanity metrics. Of course, we track our APIs, but we're not just looking at the number of hits, we're looking at the quality of our hits
Yeah.
and what publications we're in, when we've shifted now, not just to our industry publications, in the technology and the cybersecurity space, but also we found a lot of value in the business space,
Yeah.
communicating with the C-suite directly. We see a lot of value in other industry verticals,
Yep.
manufacturing publications, national security publications, government publications,
Yep.
AI specific, you name it. So we've really had to shift our approach. And it's been a bit of a journey over the past couple years. And I think we have done a tremendous job. And my team, I am just so impressed with them every single day, how they can elevate our messaging
Yeah.
and get us into these fantastic publications and communicate in ways that we never could before, because it really is harder to do that for B2B than it is for consumer.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Um, so this has been a absolutely fantastic conversation. As we kind of wrap up here, is there anything coming up that you want to be sure that our listeners hear that Keepers got in the? You teased the commercial and the new campaign, which is awesome. Is there anything else that's coming up soon that you want to be sure to land before we wrap?
We have a ton of great content on social media. The one that I teased is one of a ton of different initiatives we're doing. And I really encourage people to follow us on social because we're incredibly educational. And so
Yeah.
you will learn about cybersecurity. You will learn how to protect yourself, how to protect your organization, but we make it approachable. We make it fun. We make it interesting. We have professional F1 drivers playing chess
Nice.
with great outcomes. So follow Keeper Security across all of our social channels, and you can kind of keep up with what we're doing. Again, whether you're someone who's very technical into cybersecurity, or if you're just an everyday user. My mother-in-law loves Keeper, huge proponent of Keeper. It took so long for me to convince her to start using it, and now she can't imagine life without it. So we speak
Love it.
to mother-in-laws out there. We speak to the small business owner. We speak to the security, CISO or
Yep.
whoever what is on the IT team. Those security professionals. So really, some cool stuff across all of the platforms: TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, X, you name it, we're on all of them.
I love it. Good stuff. So, and as we wrap up, I want to finish with a personal insight about you. Is there a little known fact about you that you'd care to share?
So, yes, you told me to think on this, and I did. And this has nothing to do with our conversation or really anything. It doesn't impact anyone else, but it's interesting. So we'll go with it.
Love it. Love it.
Um, my little known fact is one summer I broke my foot, got Lyme disease,
Oh no.
and got struck by lightning.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's
I learned
crazy.
to tell about it, but that's
You
my
have
fun.
nine lives. Obviously, you have 9 lives. That's
3 of them are
fantastic.
gone. Uh,
Wow. Well, hopefully
yeah,
your summers since have been much better.
much better,
That's
much improved.
that's
Yes.
that's an awful lot. Well, Anne, thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. I know our listeners will find
You.
it absolutely interesting. We'll have to get you back in about a year's time to do a catch up and see what the latest is. In the meantime, safe travels and many productive sessions all around the world. And thanks again for being a guest.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate the opportunity.
And with that, we'll wrap up another episode of Beyond the Brief. As always, stay tuned because there's always more coming beyond the brief.